So momentarily, our guest speaker will be getting on. We are in a very busy time. We're in the last week and a half before Pesach, and we're all trying to get ready fully, completely, to have the house ready, to have all the food that we need ready, all the things that we need to be able to make Pesach in the fullest and completest way. But most importantly, we obviously want to get ready as well spiritually. We want to make Pesach meaningful, that it has the message that will carry us not only through the holiday, but carry us through the year. And the theme of Pesach is freedom, from slavery to freedom. And being already for a year within our pandemic, just not long ago, they marked the 1 year anniversary of the naming it a pandemic. So to a certain extent, we are also in a certain way feeling locked down, feeling sort of held back. And we're looking to have freedom ourselves, not just the Pesach, but ourselves, to come to a freedom, be able to be who we are and what we are. So the theme, hello, Rabbi, the theme of Pesach and really what we're dealing with in pandemic really fall into the same concept. So we invited for us tonight, and we will ask Dina to highlight. I believe Rabbi is on. We asked to join us tonight and to give us some of his time and to share his wisdom. We brought Rabbi Friedman. Rabbi Friedman is a name that doesn't need much introduction, very well known in Montreal and around the world. He's been to our Chabad several times to do Shabbatons, been to Montreal many other times. A rabbi, author of 2 very popular books, Doesn't Anyone Blush Anymore, or The Joy of Intimacy, social philosopher, speaker, spoke in every continent, in every country around the world, obviously a shaliach of the Rebbe, someone who has been carrying the message of Torah for years, even to the furthest corners, but most importantly, someone who has talks to the hearts and minds of those who are listening to him, and more importantly, gets to the heart of the matter. So I'd like to take a step back and hand it over to Rabbi Friedman to please enlighten us from lockdown to freedom. How do we deal with being in the middle of a pandemic, covering the Pesach holiday? What's the answers that we're all looking for to help us move forward?
Rabbi, can you unmute? Could you unmute yourself? I'm trying to get you unmuted.
Unmuted.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
So how is everybody?
We are Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
Okay. So it's been a year. What an incredible year. The best of times and the worst of times. So much good has come from this, and so much pain has come from it. The only way to explain it or to get a handle on it is what the Rebbe told us so many times. We are the last generation of Golus and the first generation of Geula, which means it's the worst of times and it's the best of times. Because it is so confusing to be standing with one foot in one reality and the other foot in a different reality. It's hard enough to be with both feet in Golas. To be with one foot in Golas is totally crazy. So I think the best way to describe this year, this past year, it was the year of confusion. Total confusion. We just don't know anything. We don't know what happened. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's coming. We don't know what to do with this crazy flu and this virus. Very, very unsettling. There's no question that the rug has been pulled out from under us. Because everything we thought we knew, everything we depended on or trusted in or believed in has failed us. Every form of government has its flaws, serious flaws. So we saw the collapse of communism, and we thought that vindicates or validates democracy. Now we're seeing all the weaknesses of democracy. And it's pretty scary. Science was going to solve all our problems. Medicine, hospitals, the safest, the greatest, the best in the world. Our schools, our businesses, our entertainment, the best in the world. And that became the definition of life. Life means you go to work, you go to school, you travel a little bit, you go shopping, you go to entertainment, to a sports event. Excuse me. That's life. Let's consider something very sobering.
Okay.
A year ago, when the idea of being in lockdown was first introduced, most people's reaction was, this is not possible. This is not doable. You remember probably. Be stuck in the house with the kids. No school. No work. It didn't seem possible. And couples stuck with each other for more than 6 hours in a row, not doable. This is going to be a disaster. The police were preparing body bags. They were predicting domestic violence is going to go through the ceiling, through the roof. Now let's look back at that and see how horrible that was. We considered it normal to have that reaction to being home with our kids. We called that life. We want to go back to that. Do the children know? I'm sure they do. Do they know that the thought of being with them horrifies their parents? What does that do to them? And couples who consider themselves successfully married, as long as they don't have to spend more than 6 hours together, this was called marriage. how did we ever accept that as normal, as healthy, as moral? It's horrifying. We have to really thank God that we were forced to look at it from a distance and see clearly for the first time in many, many years. The workplace. Anybody want to go back to work? The workplace is so unhealthy, producing so much anxiety, competition, greed, the rat race. Everybody's on antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills. Why? Why did we subject ourselves to that and consider it normal? Yes, you go to work every day to an environment that produces nothing but anxiety and encourages greed and competition. And you come back feeling like a rag. And that's if you make money. If you do all of that and don't make money, now you're really depressed. It was such an unhealthy environment. We will hopefully never go back to that. It should never have been acceptable in the first place. In the good old simple days, you went to work and you worked hard. There was no anxiety, there was no greed, there was no competition. If you were a wood chopper, you chopped the wood, and if you're a water carrier, you schlepped the water, and if you were a butcher, you butchered. And then you came home and you felt like you did your job and you can pay attention to your family. So, if we're looking for a silver lining, did anything good come from this lockdown, from this pandemic? The biggest blessing that came from it is that we see clearly. We see clearly. We needed a distance to be able to look at our lives a little objectively, to recognize it for what it was. The fact is that at least for the first half year, children loved being home. Parents enjoyed having them home. It was wonderful. Not what they predicted at all. Sure, there was friction, there was bad news, but that's not because of the virus, that's because people don't get along. So of course there were couples who got divorced, couples whose friction and tension got aggravated. But as a rule, couples became closer to each other. In Israel, they were predicting a 60% increase in divorces. What actually happened in this past year, the divorce rate went down 3%, which is not a big number. But when you're predicting that it goes up 60%, and instead it goes down 3%, that's an amazing thing. There's another thing we need to consider. And this is really radical, crazy idea, but it's true. For some reason, as a result of this experience, our understanding of life and death has changed. Here's another crazy idea that we thought was normal, but it's time to get rid of the idea. Wouldn't everybody agree, everybody in the whole world, wouldn't everybody agree that life is temporary? Life is very short, very brief. Before you know it, you're old. And the pressure is on to accomplish quickly. Do what you can, because who knows? Who knows how much time we have? Life is temporary. Death is permanent. All that live will die. Those who die are gone forever. No one ever comes back. Is that not the going, acceptable thinking? But let's consider that for a moment. As comfortable as we are with that idea, does it really make any sense at all? Life is everything. Life is meaningful. Life is purposeful. Life is rich. Life is pleasurable. But that's all temporary. Death, which is meaningless, purposeless, no pleasure, that's forever. Is that not the most depressing thought you've ever had? So when children say life stinks, they've got a point, no? If everything good is temporary, and that which is the ultimate negative is permanent, then something doesn't make sense. It's depressing. It's morbid. How could it be? The answer is, it's not true. It can't be true. It mustn't be true. It isn't true. Life is forever. Death is temporary. It hasn't been our experience, but it's got to be the truth. So let's think for a moment. What do you tell children about the grandpa or the grandma that passed away? What do you say? So we have these traditional answers that we've been using for many years, but it's not good enough. Like one answer that is quite popular, what happened to grandpa? He's in a better place now. We should never think that and never say that, because it isn't correct. There is no better place than being alive on earth. How can you say to a child who's got a whole life ahead of him that there's a better place? But you got to die to get there. What kind of a disturbing message is that? There's no better place. In fact, that whole expression comes from Christianity, not from Judaism. There is no better place. Heaven is a very nice place, but so is a retirement home. So to Jews, going to heaven means you're retired and they'll take good care of you, but you're not useful anymore. We don't want that. That is not better. We would much rather be here doing what God needs us to do, making the world holier. That's life. Sitting in heaven, not a better place. So it sends the wrong message. I actually once said to a Muslim, if you think that there is a better place than Earth, then you're a potential terrorist. If there's a better place and you can get there by blowing yourself up, then why don't you? The sooner the better. There is no better place. Another answer that we give children, which is also not really appropriate, is God loves Grandpa, so God took him to be close to himself. God took him to heaven because God wants your grandfather next to him. Sounds nice? Not to the child. God wants my grandfather next to him. I want my grandfather next to me. And not just me, all my siblings. We all need Grandpa next to us. But God loves him, so God takes him for himself. Now you want me to love God? So we got to think a little beyond the sentence to hear what it sounds like to the child. So what should we tell children about death? And we don't need to clean it up or spin it in an untrue fashion. The reality and the truth is the best policy, and children will get the most out of it. So here's what we need to know for ourselves so that we can tell it to our children. Life is permanent, death is temporary. For example, what does it mean that somebody was alive and then he died? What does that mean? How can something alive stop being alive? It's not like life is unnatural. There are things that are alive and there are things that are not alive. Things that are not alive will never live. Things that are alive will never die. Death doesn't live, life doesn't die. So that which is a living being will always be a living being. To say life died is like saying the salt spoiled or the water is dry. There's no dry water. And there's no dead life. So the soul that is the living part of us cannot die. It can't. It's a living thing. It can't die. It can't be killed. And it's the soul that experiences all of life. All our feelings, all our wisdom, all our discoveries. It's all in the soul. The body doesn't have those capacities. So although it comes through the body, like you see through your eyes, but what part of you actually sees? Your neshama. You think with your mind, your brain, but what actually knows? Your neshama. You feel emotions in the heart, but it's the soul that's in the heart. So, If a soul never dies, then its memories never die, which means its relationships never die. A mother never stops being a mother to her children. Never. For all eternity. A father never stops being a father. A child never stops being a child. So when we say that the soul doesn't die, it's not like the Christian idea that when a person dies, he goes to heaven and becomes an angel. An angel has no personality. An angel is not the person that you were when you were in your body. It's not even true. We don't become angels. A soul is greater than any angel. So what do we mean that the soul doesn't die? It doesn't change personality. It's the same personality, the same human, the same being, with the same temperament. If your father had a short temper and you go to visit his grave, don't say anything to get him angry. He still has that same personality. So the person is intact. Only they've moved. They were here, now they're someplace else. But it's the same person. A mother remains a mother no matter how far she is separated from her children. So going to heaven is a huge separation. But a mother remains a mother. I had an experience, very profound, the kinds of experience that make everything worthwhile. I was invited to speak someplace, and I arrive, and the driver comes to pick me up at the airport, and we're driving to the hotel. And the driver says, we're going to go straight to the hotel. I know you're tired, so we're not going to make any stops, which often does happen. But no, we're not going to make any stops. We're going to go straight to the hotel. I said, that's very nice. Thank you. He said, at the hotel, there's a young couple waiting for you. They need to talk to you because they've had a terrible tragedy. So before you can go up to your room and unpack, you're gonna talk to this couple. I was really not in the mood at all. And it's never comfortable to talk to people who have had a terrible tragedy. But they're already waiting for me at the hotel. So to make a long story short, here is a beautiful young couple, beautiful people. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The girl was 6 years old and suffered an aneurysm, which is so rare. The child died within minutes, and the parents were not home. So you can imagine the shock and the horror and they were pretty traditional. They were very, very devoted to the synagogue. They attended regularly. He put on tefillin. They kept Shabbos more or less. They were into it. But since that happened, they don't go to synagogue anymore. They've had it with talking to rabbis. They don't want to talk anymore. And he doesn't put on tefillin anymore. They're angry. So I knew that I couldn't give the typical conventional answers or condolences. They've heard it all. So I tried something a little unusual. I asked the father, "Has your daughter visited you yet?" He said, "What? Nobody ever asked me that." I said, "Did she?" He says, "Twice." I said, "What did she say?" Well, she didn't actually say anything. She just smiled, kind of letting me know that she's okay. I said, "Why do you think she needed to come twice to do the same thing?" It's not easy for a soul to communicate. It's a very long distance call. Why would she do it twice? I said, "Your daughter is trying to tell you something. Yes, she is happy, but she needs you to know that. Because how do you think she feels knowing that you are depressed, you're angry at God, you don't go to the synagogue, you don't keep Shabbos anymore, you don't put on tefillin anymore, all because of her? This is what your daughter needs from you? What kind of father are you?" The point is, he stopped being her father, and that's a big mistake. People often, when they go into grief, they just become permanent professional grievers, mourners, like they're going to do this for the rest of their life. And they forget that there's a relationship here. Your daughter may be in heaven, but she's 6 years old. She needs her father. She needs her father to be strong. The man said, "Should I put on my tefillin now or should I wait till I get home?" It was such an amazing transformation. All the anger went out of him, all the resentment, all the negativity, the poison. And he went back to being his lovable self because he went back to being a father to his daughter. The soul does not die because it can't, but it also doesn't change its personality or its relationships. So we have to remain loyal to the relationships. So then what is death? If the soul doesn't die, the memories don't die, the relationship doesn't die, then what is death? Okay, maybe death is what happens to the body, right? We actually call it a dead body. That's true. The body is dead, but the body was always dead. A body never really has a life of its own. So when the body doesn't have life, it's not like a life died. Life can't die. The body never really had life. So when the soul is not giving it life, the body is made of earth. And without the soul, it goes back to earth. Everything goes back to where it came from. And that's why we don't cremate and we don't throw away body parts. Everything needs to go back to the earth from which it came. We also have great respect for the body because without the body, we couldn't do any of the good things we accomplished during life. Like Pesach is coming, you can't eat matzah without a body. You can't drink 4 cups of wine without a body. Can't put on tefillin without a body, light a candle without body. The body goes to the mikveh, not the soul. So without our body, we could do no mitzvah. Can't give charity without a body. So the real question of justice in the world, when does the body get rewarded for the mitzvahs that it performed? We believe that the soul gets rewarded in heaven. That's what heaven is, the reward. But that doesn't include the body. So there's a terrible injustice here. The mitzvah for which you're getting rewarded was performed 90% by the body, only 10% by the soul. And yet the soul gets rewarded and the body doesn't. Where's justice? Therefore, it is absolutely essential that someday the soul will come back to its body, the body in which it performed the mitzvah. And the body will be recomposed after being decomposed. The soul will again give life to its body, and then both the body and the soul will be rewarded properly. Heaven is a very partial reward. That's why we treat the body with so much respect, because the soul is going to want to come back to the body. So that's what it means that death is temporary. Death is the separation between body and soul. Nothing actually died. Life did not end. But the contract, the number of days that was destined for this soul to be in this body, the days ended. Time is up. The body didn't die because it was never really alive, and the soul can't die because it is really alive. So this separation of body and soul is temporary. Life is forever. That's what we need to tell our children, because that's the emes. So maybe it's true that God took Grandpa to be close to him, but temporarily. Maybe the soul needs a little bit of a rest and a retirement, but not forever. And particularly today, we are so close to the coming of Mashiach, when the dead will be resurrected, that today when a person dies, it is not only temporary, it's brief. People who died 1,000 years ago, their temporary separation of body and soul is a long separation. But people who died this year, you see, it really doesn't pay to die anymore. If you're going to come back so soon, what's the point? So death has got to stop. It's pointless. It served whatever purpose it was supposed to serve. It's no longer sensible. It all started with eating from the tree of knowledge. Okay, enough already. How much damage can an apple do? And it's amazing. Every subject in Judaism is pleasant, enjoyable. And when you explain it to people, they love it. But there was one subject you could not talk about. Could not. And that is the resurrection of the dead. You could not talk about it. People would freak out, think you're completely crazy. That was a year ago. Today, something has changed. Today, you can talk about it, and people are not freaked out by it. People are not even skeptical about it. It suddenly makes sense. Death is temporary. It has to be. Life is permanent because it has to be. It's a whole new lease on life. This pandemic has created a major shift. We can understand a little bit. How is it that Mashiach is going to come and everything's going to be great? Everybody will be nice, people will get along, there'll be peace on earth. Really? How realistic is that? How could that possibly happen? And that's why most people who believe that Mashiach is going to come are also convinced that it's not going to happen in their lifetime, because they can't imagine no wars. They can't imagine nations getting along. How do you get along with the Chinese? What's going to happen in the Middle East? Oh, Mashiach will come and everybody will become nice. What are you saying? How can you believe such a thing? There'll be no wars. Not even between cousins who haven't talked to each other in 30 years. It seems so unrealistic. But now it's starting to make sense. People are thinking differently. Everybody, all over the world, they're thinking differently. What do we want to fight a war for? For what? It doesn't make sense. What are we fighting over? It no longer makes sense. What am I jealous of? What am I competing for? Doesn't make sense. So it's shifted from one extreme to the other. A year ago, it made no sense that there would be peace because war was inevitable. Now, to most people in the world, war? Who needs war? For what? Why? So you're seeing one country after another who decided to make peace with Israel. What happened all of a sudden? Netanyahu just announced that there are 4 other countries in line to open their embassies and to make official relationships with Israel. One after another after another. What happened? There was a pandemic and suddenly peace is breaking out. Yeah, the pandemic has made us wise. It has made us mature. It has opened our eyes to how foolish life was until today. That's massive. The fact that some couples got into nasty fights and some children hate being home, okay, that's not miraculous. That's pretty typical and predictable. And it can get better. But this improvement in the way we're thinking, this is Mashiach. Sum it up this way. What we learned from this pandemic is that we don't need what we thought we needed. We don't need. We could not imagine what life would be without shopping. Yeah, we can live without shopping. People couldn't imagine what life would be without sports. We can live without sports. Some people couldn't imagine what life would be without travel, without work. We thought we had the definition for life, and it was all those things. It turns out it's none of them. So now the big question in everybody's mind, so what is life? I thought I needed all of those things, and now I realize I don't. So what do I need? Remember in the olden days, you had to store up a lot of toilet paper? See, that we still need. It's not exactly a definition for life. So here's what people are realizing. And this is the second major shift. I really don't need anything. I don't. I thought I needed so many things. Turns out I don't need anything. Nothing. Why? Because I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask to be born. Why didn't I ask to be born? Because I don't need it. Who needs to be born? Nobody. Why did it take us 5,000 years to realize this? So there was a guy in India, 27-year-old, 26-year-old. He took his parents to court and sued them to pay all his bills for the rest of his life because they gave birth to him without his consent. At first, it sounds like a joke, but think about it for a second. He didn't ask to be born. He didn't agree to be born. He doesn't need to be born. And yet the parents went ahead and gave birth to him. And now he has to go to school and he has to graduate and he has to get a job and he has to make big money so that he can pay the mortgage. His argument is, I never signed a contract. I never made an oral agreement that I would pay bills. You brought me into the world. You paid a bill. Come on, doesn't that make sense? You invite me to the most expensive restaurant and then you tell me to pay the bill? That's nasty. And the same is true with Judaism. We are told, you must go to shul. You must keep Shabbos. You must go to the mikveh. You must put on tefillin. You must keep kosher. You have to. You must. I have to? What? How did that happen? Why do I have to? Did I agree to it? Did you ask me? Where did this obligation come from? It's not right. So the children today are saying to their parents and to their grandparents, I don't need this. I don't need to keep Shabbos. Of course, the religious grandfather says, oh, yes, you must. You have to. And the kid says, I thought about it and I don't have to. Here, watch. Watch me not keep Shabbos. See, I don't have to. So let me end with this beautiful illustration. True story. A boy from New York goes off to Yeshiva in France. The dean of the Yeshiva there was a very profoundly Hasidic, devoted, wise, godly man. This young boy arrives, he's 16. He arrives the first day that he's there. He goes into the office and he says to the dean, I need to call my mother. Which phone can I use? The dean said, I need to call my mother. The boy was a little stunned. Oh, are you making fun of me? So he said again, yes, I need to call my mother. And the dean again said, I need to call my mother. So the boy was not a foolish boy. He understood. So he says to the dean, my mother needs me to call her. Which phone can I use? And the dean said, oh, now you talk like a mensch. That's your first lesson in yeshiva here. A teenage boy doesn't need to call his mother. Unfortunately for the mother. But a mother needs to hear that her child arrived safely overseas. She's probably sitting by the phone. So when the boy said, I need to call my mother, not true, and also not interesting and not impressive. When he said, my mother needs me to call her, so I will call her if you just give me the phone, that's impressive. That's meaningful. That's noble. And everyone who can help will want to help. But if you need to call your mother, so go find a telephone. It makes a huge difference. Same is true with life itself. I need a bicycle. I need a phone. I have to have a phone. We don't have to have anything. Children are catching on. You need to clean your room before supper. I need to clean my room. I don't need a room. I don't need the toys in the room. I didn't ask to be born. I don't need life. So how can I need to clean up a room? Doesn't this make sense? So what is the truth? Like with the boy and his mother, I don't need to put on tefillin. God is waiting for me to put on tefillin. So I'll do it. Now you're talking. Now you're talking. Because the ultimate truth, which we all must realize, and it's time to realize, we are not needy. We are needed. That's the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. The Torah comes to tell us. God came down to Mount Sinai to tell us how necessary we are to Him, not what we need to hear. We are not needy creatures. We never were. It was a mistake. Well, if you don't get a job and you don't have money and you're living in the streets, you're going to die from a disease. So I have to live my whole life so that I don't die? Does that make any sense? Doesn't make sense. We were never the needy ones. Look at the story, the first story in the Torah. God creates Adam and Eve and puts them in the Garden of Eden. What do they need? They need nothing. They have to eat. They didn't ask for that. It's not their need. God created them with a dependency on food. They needed nothing except to know what they are needed for. So God told them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and conquer it. That's what is needed from you. What do you need? Nothing. So tell me if this doesn't make so much intuitive sense. God created the whole universe, but He needs nothing. And I didn't ask to be born, and I have all sorts of needs? That doesn't make sense. Only the Creator has needs. If you create a universe, you're probably trying to accomplish something, right? How did we get this so backwards? We're needy and God needs nothing? How did that happen? Not true. Not true. So here's the choice in life. And this is only because of COVID that we're suddenly realizing this. The choice in life is not to be good or bad. What kind of choice is that? Being bad is an option? The choice in life is you can either feel needy or you can feel needed. Your choice. If you feel needy, you're going to be depressed because it's not true. You're not needy. If you feel needed, you will be inspired, you will be enthusiastic about life, and you will feel so liberated. Not you must. Not you need. Your mother needs to hear from you. God needs you to put on tefillin. So you have 5 minutes. Do it. You didn't do it yesterday? Okay. Nothing's changed. You're still needed. And that's why we don't measure people by how many mitzvahs they do, how orthodox they are, how frum they are. That's quite beside the point. If I can do something for the Creator that is really meaningful to the Creator, then what difference does it make whether I've done it before, whether I'm going to do it again tomorrow? Right now, I can do something for my Creator. And the pleasure that that brings, that's the real thing. Because now I know why I'm here. I had an experience where a father called me from Israel. He says, my 12-year-old daughter got it into her head that God is angry at her and she's all miserable. And nothing we tried has worked. And then he puts her on the phone. So I said, God is angry at you? She says, yeah. I said, I'm so jealous. She says, what? I said, I am so jealous. You can get God angry? How did you become so important? Her problem went away. You're 12 years old and you can get God angry? Is that not the biggest compliment you've ever gotten? See, that's why in the Torah, when we read how angry God gets, we don't get depressed. We finish the reading of the Torah and we go into the social hall and we make kiddush and we have a little herring and a little kichel. Nobody walks out trembling. Why? Because when God says, you make me angry, we're so complimented. You notice what I'm doing? It matters to you what I do. And if I don't do right, you get angry? How did I become so powerful? So even if God was angry at us, which he is not, he's absolutely thrilled with us. He told us one time to be his people, once, 3,300 years ago. He never said it again. And in 2 weeks, 3,333 years later, Jews all over the world are going to sit and make a Seder and eat matzah and drink 4 cups with the bitter herbs, with the 4 kashas, with the unbelievable. Is every Jew completely observant? Of course not. How could they be? Look at what God put us through. Under these circumstances, any mitzvah that any Jew does is miraculous. So it's not possible that God is angry or even disappointed. He is thrilled with his people because we are an incredible people. And part of the secret is we don't have needs. We can live big and rich in Spain, or we can hide in a cellar during the Inquisition. We remain Jews. God is our God, and we know what we need to do. We know how needed we are, so we are not needy. And that's why we out-survive everybody. And God is absolutely thrilled. So all of this is to a great degree due to the corona. It really sobered us up. So feel unburdened. You have no needs, but you are very needed. And if God needs you, then of course he'll take care of you. How is he going to get what he needs if we're not healthy? That's why we're optimistic. That's why we trust in God, because it's his issue, not mine. So I don't have to beg him to keep me healthy. I don't have to beg him to give me what to eat. It's his plan that's on the line. So since I have no needs, I'm thrilled to hear that I'm needed, so I know what I'm doing here. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm doing here. So let's serve God with joy. The joy of having something to do. Otherwise, we're going to be needy, and that's depressing. So who wants that? So let's get ready for Pesach with enthusiasm, with joy, with optimism, with a light heart, unburdened. We are not needy, helpless, dependent victims begging for a little mercy from God. That is so depressing. On the contrary, wake up in the morning and say, God, what do you need from me today? And as much as I can do, I will gladly do it. That's Jewish. What do you think, people?
Rabbi, I wanted to, I know you're on a tight schedule as well. Very, very profound and beautiful. I don't know if you have still time for like a question or two, or you're very tight. I know you're very in demand. There's no question, a lot of thoughts to ponder. I see people's faces. But you tell us if you have a minute or two for a question.
Yes, let's have a question.
So if anyone has a question, unmute yourself, say your name and ask the question. Let's move quickly.
Rabbi, this is Elliot Newman. You've given us so much to think about that it's going to take a lot of sorting out. You've covered so many bases, and the thoughts are complex. You know, from living together and not dying, and having the body lie for 1,000 years, but being ready for the coming of the Mashiach so it can be resurrected and reconstituted. These are all marvelous articles of faith, and somehow, without letting my mind get in the way, I believe them. But I'm not so sure I'd be able to repeat anything of what you said to my wife, who is going to want to know right away, what did Rabbi Friedman tell me?
Well, the good thing is, Elliot, that the whole thing is recorded.
Oh, good. Good. I can have her listen. Because this has been beautiful and fantastic and very unexpected, but very profound also, and quite real. So thank you.
That was a very good summary, by the way.
Thank you.
One more question. If we want, we'll take if anyone else has a question. Again, unmute yourself. Say your name. If not, we will give a chance for the rabbi. Is anyone here taking us up? I think, like Elliot, everyone is allowing it to percolate in their mind and their heart, and hopefully give a chance going into Pesach to have that sense of freedom that you talked about. I want to thank Rabbi Friedman for really sharing the profound thoughts, deep ideas, and giving us a perspective that will help us really put everything into the right frame of mind, ourselves in the right frame of mind. We should all have a kosher, freilich, and happy, pleasant, and enjoyable Pesach, and really experience freedom.
So if you're sitting at the Seder, here's what's useful. The whole Haggadah is marveling at the fact that God came to take us out of Egypt. We're not saying we're thrilled to be free. We never have to build another pyramid. That's not what Pesach is all about. The Haggadah tells you can't get over the fact that God came to take us out of Egypt. That's amazing. He came looking for us. See what that means? We're not the ones who are needy, even while we're slaves. God comes and says, what are you doing wasting your time working for Pharaoh when I need you to work for me? So let's get out of here. I'll meet you at Mount Sinai, and I'll tell you exactly what I need from you. So the exodus from Egypt was an expression of God's looking for us. And the event at Mount Sinai is when God let us know what we are needed for. So that should be the theme of the Haggadah, the theme of the Seder night. We can get over the fact that we haven't been slaves for 3,000 years. That's old news. But that he came to take us, we'll never get over that, because that's everything. So everything makes more sense once you start thinking along these lines. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Have a very enjoyable, meaningful, inspiring Pesach.
Amen.
Thank you
To
very,
you,
very much.
Rabbi Friedman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining and being with us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you on some of the other things we have going on before Pesach, for women next week, cooking, communal get-together next Thursday night. Follow our emails and help everyone make their Pesach a very special one. Thank you again, Rabbi Friedman.
Hold on,
and
a couple
everyone
of
for-
things. A couple of things I just want to say. Number one, if anyone is available to volunteer, we need volunteers to help deliver matzah and pack matzah. That's number one. Number two, we are having next Monday night. If people are sick of cooking, I'm sure you'll be busy getting ready for the holiday. My son-in-law is a chef par excellence. And he is going to be making a supper club at Chabad for takeout. People give in their orders in advance, and you pick it up. So it's like a restaurant that you do pick up. It's takeout food. Really, really good, top of the line food. You could go on our Chabad Facebook. You can go on our Chabad, our ChabadTMR.com, Instagram. The menu's on there. Really good food, and it's not Pesach food. It's pre-Passover next Monday night, so you don't have to make dinner Monday night. But everything must be ordered by Friday. You have to give in your order. There's an order form and everything. If you need more info, you know any of our numbers, you can call us and we'll send you the menu. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you again
Good
very
night.
much for joining and being with
Thank
us.
you.
And I hope you'll think over the many profound points that Rabbi Friedman shared with us tonight. Very refreshing and powerful perspective. Be well, everyone. We love you all.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Be well, everyone.
You too. Bye.
Great seeing you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. I missed most of it, of course.